Hello, today we have the honor and privilege of having a guest speaker with us. I'd like to give a brief introduction of Mr. Shannon Stone. Shannon's kind of a renaissance man. He owns a marketing and a cultural management consulting firm. He's also the executive president of a group called HBBA, which is a small business networking group. And he also serves as the president of the United Nations Chamber of Commerce. So Shannon, welcome very much, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting
I'd
me.
like you to maybe just give us a little bit of background about yourself, different positions you've had, and just tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, when I was younger, I got out of the Navy and I needed to figure out a way how to support myself. So I actually started with an electrical contracting business, and from about 1992 to 1999, we built a business from me and my cousin to me and about 40 other people. And so I learned a lot about business from that endeavor. Eventually I did get into marketing, and the reason why I got into marketing was I wanted to understand people and relationships, which eventually guided me into HBBA, the organization that you mentioned. HBBA is a business referral network. It started out as a single group of about a dozen people, and now it encompasses over 30 groups, 30 chapters in 3 districts across the state of Wisconsin. And our focus there is really on relationship building, teaching people how to become leaders in whatever they're trying to do. And of course, I also have taken on the challenge of being chairman of the Oneida Chamber of Commerce. And that's fairly new, and it's a twist on what we do in HBBA, because we're really working on a very unique culture, because we're dealing with the Native American tribe of Oneida, and we're also dealing with integrating that with the traditional American culture.
Okay, very good. Thanks for sharing that. Shannon, you know, the whole term of sustainability means different things to many different people. I'd like to just get your opinion when you hear the word sustainability, what it means to you. Can you share that with us, please?
Sure. You know, when I think about sustainability, I think about, of course, we think about the green energy and alternative energies, but really sustainability in terms of business and marketing is about the options that we have. So how do we take a business from where we are today and get it into the future, get it to tomorrow and next year and 20 years from now and 100 years from now? How do we sustain that business? And so it's about making different choices to get there.
Okay. Shannon, you're one of the best minds I know about that thinks about marketing from a different perspective. And the term macro marketing is kind of one of the themes of the course. And I wanted to get your reaction to this. They talk about the little m being the 4 or 5 P's of marketing, the big M, how those 4 or 5 P's interact with portions of the company, but the biggest M is really macro marketing, how marketing fits with a firm, society, governments, everything else. Can I get kind of your take on that macro marketing perspective and how that fits with the concept of sustainability?
Sure. You know, when we talk about marketing, I look at marketing from the perspective of we have an internal marketing process that takes place, an external marketing that takes place, and then the large marketing, which is kind of encompasses all the stakeholders that are involved in the process. So internal marketing, you know, we get into a lot of culture management or organizational behavior. What are the values of the people that are working for us? What are the values of the company? And how do we integrate them and get them aligned with each other so that they work together? A lot of times that means that we're going to work with people in non-traditional ways. So we might be doing telecommuting as a part of our strategy, or we might be doing job sharing in our strategy. So these are not traditional ways of doing things. But again, when we talk about sustainability, we're talking about the alternatives that are available to us that make sense for the business that we're in. And so then when we take a look at externally, so who's our customer base? Now we start marketing or dealing with a different culture, or possibly a culture that we're trying to align our company with. But the ideal is that by understanding that culture, we'll be able to present our products in a way, or services in a way that's going to appeal to that particular target group. And then when we take a look at the macro. So how does a company fit into a global society? All right. Today we don't just sell to the people in the neighborhood. We sell around the world, and so that may mean that we have to match to several different cultures. We have to appeal to several different types of people, and it takes some planning, and it takes some solid vision as far as where your company is going to go. So that's where we very often get into social responsibility. What is expected out of a company today? When we look at having a greener environment, when we look at our relationship with our employees, I mean, these are the things that the broader world will see in us. And because of the fact that changes or things that a company does, well, it might seem minor and very micro, it in fact is a very macro activity.
Okay, very good. Thanks for sharing that. Once again, as you do consulting with different companies, more companies are talking about this triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. In your travels and as you work with companies, whether from the cultural aspect or the marketing aspect, do you see that really getting a lot of traction and that evolving with companies, a triple bottom line orientation?
You know, I think what's taking place in the world today is people are recognizing that green is not necessarily unprofitable. There are different things that are taking place. We had talked about LED lights earlier, and how by changing from a traditional incandescent light or even fluorescent lights, it's more green, but it's also more economical for a company to do those sorts of things. So when companies are looking at the triple bottom line, as you were speaking about, they're not just looking at the bottom line or what the profitability is going to be this year. They're looking very much into the future and saying, how is this going to impact us, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road with the decisions that we make today. And sometimes there's an upfront investment. That doesn't make it a bad thing. It just means that there may be an initial investment. And businesses are now, they're looking at investing in not only in their infrastructure, but in their people. And so, again, we're looking at the different alternatives. How do we accomplish these goals that may not have been done in the past?
Okay. Shannon, I'd like to just shift gears a little bit and talk about your involvement with the HBBA group. And you started explaining a little bit about that earlier, but in our course we talk about sustainable entrepreneurs and those people that are involved from the green end of things. And could you maybe give any examples of companies that are part of the HBBA group that are involved as sustainable entrepreneurs and what that means to you?
Absolutely. One of the companies that immediately comes to mind is Eland Electric. Eland Electric, as soon as solar started becoming a buzzword, they jumped on right away. And so now they are actually one of the top solar installers in the state of Wisconsin. I was actually involved in them when they wrote their initial marketing plan. And, so there's a company that is looking at different ways to help companies save energy, save money, and eventually money that can be reallocated to other programs that are more effective for that business. Another company that just recently joined is Alliance Electric, and they're actually owned in part by the Oneida tribe. But Alliance Electric was very involved in the development of the current waste to energy program that is out there right now. It's a very exciting program because it basically takes waste product and it converts it back into usable base products such as petroleum and propane and electricity, and even the end product, which is a carbon ash, and even that is a product that can be used in different industries.
Okay. And I know, Shannon, you also have the Oneida Chamber of Commerce located in the incubator, and we interviewed another guest speaker, Lisa Harmon, and she talked about some other companies that are also incubator tenants like Net Peak Energy and Innovative Cost Solutions and MH Resources. As you interact with those companies, do you get a different feel as you talk with them being more of a sustainable entrepreneurship than other types of firms that aren't as closely related to those? Any difference you perceive in how they operate, ways of business, that type of thing?
I really don't. I really think that they're as excited about their products as any other company does, but they recognize that their product has that sustainability factor inside them, and they know that this is where the rest of the world is going. So if they can provide those and make those services affordable and profitable for businesses, and really we're talking about economics now, if it fits the economic blueprint, then that's what companies are going to do. Companies aren't going to operate at a loss. It's just not going to happen. So when we talk about all of the goals of sustainability, in the end, it comes back to how do we get from today to next century. And companies that are involved in this are very excited because they know that's where they're going, and so they're even more probably committed to their cause because they know that what they have to do is they have to make this affordable.
Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing that. Shannon, I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about your role as the president of the Oneida Nation Chamber of Commerce. We've heard about the Oneida's 7-generation planning process, and I was wondering if you could explain just a bit of history for those not familiar with the Oneida, how they evolved and what they're doing with the different business entities and as an enterprise. Could you share a little bit about that with us, please?
Well, Oneida is very unique. You have to understand there is the Oneida tribe, which is an organization, and then you have individual tribal members. So, and then you have an entire culture, Native American culture that's involved here. And of course they're dealing with traditional white America as well. So in the ideal of what we're trying to accomplish with the Chamber, we're trying to create some economic development within that community. To me, that means we're either attracting companies into there, we are developing relationships with nearby companies, or we're developing our current businesses that we have, or helping new businesses get established there. So within the Oneida culture, we have to deal with traditional values and along with American values, and they're not that far apart, but we do have to teach people to recognize where those differences are. When we look at why Oneida would want to do this, well, the real reason that Oneida wants to do this is because they want to sustain their culture. So when we look at that, we want to get people that are sustainably minded, so they're very environmentally responsible.
Okay.
We want to attract those types of people into our community. So we have to create those jobs to attract them in there. The tribe is really about thinking about how do we get our culture or our ways into that next generation, into that 7th generation. And the decisions that we make today impact that. And so the real goal behind 7-generational thinking is don't screw it up.
Okay.
But keeping in mind that our environment while it's a renewable resource, it's not renewable quickly. And so that's what we're trying to look at. How can we work in a more cooperative fashion, very much like we do with our chambers? So the ideal behind the chamber is to work with all of these different governments and the tribal organization and the community in a way that's cooperative, instead of everybody going out there trying to get what's mine. We're trying to get rid of that attitude and change it into an attitude of cooperation. And I think that's really, if you think about it, what sustainability comes down to. How can we cooperate with our environment? How can we cooperate with our employees? How can we cooperate with our companies and make all this work together?
Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing that. Shannon, again, we talk about what consumers are like today, and the marketing aspect, there's this saying that the sacred cow is really consumption, and we want to buy more, and we want to get, we have to get that fourth or fifth TV in our house and things like that. And how does that play out with sustainability? Do you think the marketing system itself can change how consumers think about consumption, or do consumers themselves have to make that decision and have more of a simpler life? It's kind of a marketing question, and wanted to get your read on that.
I think about those Feed the Pig commercials, and really that's exactly what they're talking about is, our country works on a consumption concept, but really the United States makes up less than 1% of the total marketplace on a global base. So we really need to look at expanding our markets, and when we think about what we want to accomplish for the future, we need our consumers to be more responsible in their purchasing and really how they manage their own money. So when we have down economic times, that's where they need the money and where they may find themselves in trouble. But understanding how different companies produce products, if a company is out there and they're producing low quality products at a lower price, that may not be exactly what we want to have, because what happens is you end up replacing those products sooner, and so you end up using more resources in a shorter period of time. So we have to, as consumers, be more responsible for the way we purchase, and if companies aren't producing or aren't manufacturing within our value system, we have to use our dollars to explain that we're not happy with that process.
Okay. Another question for you, and this is kind of more of a Barbara Walters question, I hope you don't mind, but it's no secret that many of the tribes have raised revenues using the gaming industry, and many of them have diversified into other types of endeavors and kind of spread the business around. I wanted to ask this issue of the conspicuous consumer consuming so much. How does that really play out in that you're using, and for lack of a better word, a sin business like gaming, taking revenues generated from that and turning them into other resources or other types of businesses? Can you explain your read and how that process works and how that reallocation of resources works within the tribe?
Again, I think our economy is driven by where the dollars are, and I don't care if you're Native American or if you're, from the Black Hills. You're going to find something, and sometimes those products aren't going to be necessarily socially, would probably not be acceptable by some people. But we also have freedom of choice, and I think the Native American tribes are basically using the one economic resource or differentiator that nobody else has, or at least that very few people have the option of doing. So here's an economic opportunity. I also see that casinos probably aren't going to be exclusively for the tribes in the future. We're seeing more and more opportunity for individuals that are not Native American to get into that business. This is going to create a competition that's going to tighten the economies for many tribes. What that means is, as you mentioned, the diversification factor. Tribes looking for new sources of income. In doing that, I think they're going to look at things that are more traditional and more in line with the values of the tribe. So the waste to energy plant that we had mentioned earlier. Here's something where we can do something that's environmentally correct and still be profitable and probably generate more revenues than gaming would.
Okay, very good. And kind of tied to that same issue, the Oneida being a sovereign nation, their own government and things like that, one of the themes of the course talks about, would businesses do the environmentally friendly thing or the sustainable decision if they were not forced to by legislation or government? And I'm trying to picture that with a company that is part of the Oneida Nation, and would that government also try to stay out of those decisions, let businesses make those own correct decisions on sustainability? Help me understand that from your perspective again.
Okay, so Oneida governments are a little bit, or excuse me, Native American governments are a little bit unique in that, in particular, they really only manage the resources owned by that organization.
Okay.
Okay. They only have jurisdiction within certain boundaries as well. So even to the extent that a tribal member may have a business, the Native American government doesn't typically regulate that business unless they agree to be regulated by the tribe.
Yep.
Otherwise, they're regulated by American law, whether that's state or federal. That being said, I think that, again, businesses, whether they're tribally owned businesses or whether they are non-tribal businesses, they're going to tend to do what economically makes sense. And a lot of times, especially as technology advances forward, you're going to find that the alternatives that are available, especially in green energy, are going to make more sense because it's going to impact that bottom line. It's going to make, I always said if you want something done, make it profitable, and businesses will do it. And that's exactly what's taking place.
Okay. And the last question, and kind of related to that, but your own personal opinion, if companies were not forced by the government or legislation to do these types of decisions, what is your gut feel if they would make those decisions themselves without being forced or legislated into them?
Well, I think there's two things to take a look at. One is the bottom line, obviously. So does this make sense economically? Can we do this and make a profit? The second thing is acceptability by the surrounding culture. Okay, so if we want to sell baby wipes, well, they better be safe to use on babies, and they better be manufactured in a way that the people who are purchasing them want it to be manufactured. So if people are looking for all organic fibers, well, then that's what you better be using. The decision to use different processes, more green processes, really comes down to appealing to your market. And if you can make a profit and attract a larger market, it makes sense to do that. If making that change isn't going to attract a larger market, then it doesn't make sense to do that. And I think that's what businesses look at every day is, these minor things that we do they make a major impact? And if it does, they're doing them. And in a lot of cases, I think they will.
Okay, in reality, that almost captures the essence of some of the major themes of the particular text we're using, because it talks about market-based sustainability and having a marketing orientation plus in dealing with macro marketing. So that almost sounds exactly what you're talking about in marketing. Is that your read as well?
Yeah, like we were talking about before, in marketing they teach you the 4 Ps. And of course I say there's a 5th P, and that's the people. And if we ignore that 5th one, we really don't have much of the other 4 just don't really matter. And so you have to, when you think about your marketing, consider who you're marketing to.
Okay. So taking out your crystal ball, one last question. How do you see sustainability rolling out in business 20 years from now, or 25 years from now? How will it look and feel, sustainability's role in business?
I think that you're going to see more people look at different options. One company that I've been working with, they're creating miniature windmills. So if you can imagine a miniature windmill sitting on top of a building where you traditionally might not see something. Most of the time we think about windmills, we think about these great big huge monstrosities. Yeah, great big wind farms. But we know that, for instance, Chicago, it's called the Windy City for a reason, and it has a lot to do with all of the buildings that are around them, and they create additional wind forces. So could you imagine taking advantage of that man-made wind, if you will, and you've got these little windmills that are capturing that energy and putting it to work, and saving us money.
Shannon, again, if you can talk a little bit about the group that you started, the HBBA group, the small business, and also about the role of leadership in that group and how that might carry over into the cultural training of leadership in a sustainable business. So please share some thoughts about that.
Okay. Well, I didn't start HBBA myself. We actually had a large group of people come together. But the concept within HBBA really was to come up with some new ideas to network and to really help each other out. And so at first we really didn't know what we were going to do. So we really had to develop our own process. What that really meant was, one of the values that we came up with was that in this process of helping each other out, we did not want to pay anybody to do that. So if you're not paying people to do that, you have to create value in some other way. And so this meant that we had to really develop leaders with a desire to help each other out. And that began the basis of what HBBA is. It started out as a single chapter about 8 years ago. And within 3 months we had 2 chapters, and within a year we had 3 chapters, and pretty soon we were into the Fox Valley, and eventually we're into Milwaukee. And as this organization grew, as you can imagine, not being in one single location, you had to figure out a way how to share those values. And this is where the leadership really came in. So one of the questions I get asked a lot, what does a president of an organization or a CEO of an organization do? They're really there to develop that vision, and then they have to back it up. It has to be their sole focus in what they do. This is what we're here for. We're here to develop relationships. We're here to help each other out. We're here to accomplish these particular goals. When we started HBBA out, we stumbled along the way. We actually had situations where chapter leaders would get upset with us, and they would say, well, you're not doing what you promised. Well, what did we promise? I don't know, but you're damn sure not doing it. And so what we figured out was we had failed to communicate to these chapters what they should be expecting out of us. And so this is one of the things that becomes very important. Communicating not only what we expect out of them, but what they should expect out of us. And so when we got to the point where we had 30 chapters and we had 3 districts across the state of Wisconsin, and so what we had to do is figure out how do we communicate those values, those ideas and concepts across such a large group in a large distance. And that's really what it comes down to. Now, in my first year as chairman or president of the HBBA organization, it was to teach our leaders how to be leaders. And then in our second year, a big part of what we did was teaching them how to create new leaders. We have to always be creating new leaders. It's one of the primary goals of being a leader, to get out there and show people how to plant those seeds. I took on the role of chairman of HBBA for one session, and I told everybody from the beginning, one session, because I think it's very important with the type of organization that we are, where our members are our customers and they're our leaders. We need to continuously bring new leaders up with new ideas so that we can stay on top of what our marketplace is.
Okay. And the term servant leadership, can you explain that in your work with consulting and culture and things as well?
Sure.
Because that's also a major theme of the course, how servant leadership sometimes helps get on the sustainability journey.
And so really, servant leadership is, to me, it's about customer service. We have a customer and they need something. In this case, I'm a customer. And so by helping my fellow members, I'm serving them. And the way HBBA is actually set up is our members tell the leadership what they want. And then the leadership has to figure out how to accomplish those goals. So through serving our members, we actually lead them to where they want to get to.
Okay. Last question again. As far as a takeaway from an MBA student studying the area of business sustainability. What advice would you give to them regarding the necessary takeaways and how to live this as far as the issue of business sustainability? What would you tell them?
I have my tagline, manage your culture or be managed by your culture. And this is really what it comes down to. If you can get your goals, your organizational goals, and you can some way align those goals to the values that the people that you're working with, you're going to find great success. And this is really what we've talked about the whole time. So I want people to work in a certain way. What does it take, Dick, for you to want to do that for me? And it isn't always money. In fact, it's probably mostly not about the money. It's about, you hear it all the time, it's about the things I get. Is that health care? Is that what it takes to keep you here? Is that what it takes to make you happy?
Psychic income.
Yeah. Or is it more responsibility? What is it that makes you really enjoy being here and makes you want to come back day after day after day? That's where I think businesses are going. So if we can manage that in understanding the values of both our employees and the values of the corporation and align those so that they're all going in the same direction, that's where success and that's where profit comes from.
Very good. Shannon, I want to thank you very much for the comments. I enjoyed them very much, and thank you again for the time.